Hello, everybody. It's September 6th, 2018, and this is the fortnightly backdrop outreach meeting where we get together and talk about how to spread the word of backdrop and how to get it out there and in front of people. The other term for this might be called marketing, but we're trying to be a little bit more inclusive and also include any other way that we can get the message of backdrop out there. So we've got an outline here of things that we usually cover, although without Jen here, I'm not going to be able to do a lot of these updates. So I'll breeze through them kind of quickly, and then Tim and Luke here have some other topics that they would like to bring up and discuss real quickly here. So let's talk about the website. Website is our primary tool for spreading the word about backdrop, and we're always looking at ways of improving it. We always are looking for additional authors to write up blog posts. If you have an interest in writing up a blog post about backdrop, posting it to your own personal blog is, of course, highly appreciated. But if you would like to, you can also post to backdropcms.org, either as a guest author, if you will, or we can give you editorial permissions on backdropcms.org so that you can create and post your own backdrop articles kind of at your leisure. And those will generally be posted to the homepage of backdropcms.org and put into our archive as well. Within Backdrop, the community, we already have some posts that we plan on posting sometime in the near future, including some blog posts about Backdrop joining the Software Freedom Conservancy, which is our new fiscal sponsor, basically, for Backdrop, what that means for Backdrop and the way that it affects the running of our project. Let's see, we recently added up a new security page, backdropcms.org/security. I think either we might post some more content about how the security group runs and the way that Backdrop security group collaborates with the Drupal security group. Also, integrations, community spotlight ideas, like any members of the community that we might want to feature. Backdrop 1.11 will be coming out here in less than 10 days. And anything else that we could potentially cover in a blog post. I know at the very least, we have always managed to make a blog post for every release. So I hope that at the very least, we'll be able to get that post out there, but we're open to including topics on any of these things or anything else. Let's see, newsletters. We're going to be sending out a newsletter for Backdrop 1.11 as well. Also, kind of in the same categories of like things that we could be blogging about. We could also send in a newsletter. We haven't sent out an email about the Conservancy yet, so we'll probably want to get something out there to all of the people that read their inboxes, but not backdropcms.org. Let's see. And that's, I think, kind of it for the newsletter concepts. Let's see. There's no real differences in a couple of these next agenda items, so I'm going to skip down into events and meetups, of which there are a couple of events that are upcoming. It looks like DrupalCorn, September 27th through 30th. There may be some backdrop representation there. And of course, BadCamp coming up in the middle of October. We'll be having a major backdrop event there, including an all-day training, an all-day summit, and a couple of presentations, I think, during the BadCamp event itself. I don't think the BadCamp has posted their schedule yet, but I know that we have at least 2 backdrop sessions during the normal camp. So if you got the opportunity to come out to San Francisco, or more accurately, Berkeley, then that would be a great event to attend in the middle of October. I think it's October 20th.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. October 24th through 27th. There we go. Well, let's diverge from that into some other topics. I know, Tim, you specifically wanted to talk, I think, about things that we could do at Bad Camp, or other ways that we could expand kind of the backdrop outreach program. Do you want to dive right into what you had on your mind?
Sure. So Jen had asked for input a while back about how to use the community summit or the backdrop summit at Bad Camp, and I have been wondering if backdrops at the point where is it more about introducing people to backdrop, or is it more an opportunity for folks that are already involved in backdrop? And I think it seems to me like part of the answer to that is we don't know until we know who's going to be there, right? What their needs are. If a bunch of beginners show up, it doesn't make sense to talk about that, planning. But it seemed a question, I guess, before. Well, how could we use a Bad Camp to sort of plan for outreach? And I'm just wondering. I've been on a few outreach calls. There seems to be this agenda. There's some ideas, things that we're trying to do on an ongoing basis. But is there any kind of like strategic plan for outreach for backdrop? Or that's a question, Nate.
Yeah. Not beyond the efforts that we have currently, I don't think. So, we do have some help from an marketing organization, Facet Interactive, that they regularly meet up with us and tell us about, and we work together to mostly generate content, actually, about backdrop.
Right.
So I think content generation is our main thing, and then event attendance, I'd say, is probably about our secondary main way of spreading information about backdrop.
Right.
But I don't know if I could describe those things and what we talk about during this meeting as like an actual like major guiding force in marketing or in outreach.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we sat down and sort of created a plan, if it would end up being very different from what we're already doing. But I think it couldn't hurt maybe to like take a few minutes once or an hour or two once a year to like sit back and say, okay, maybe set some goals or I don't know, reflect on, are we hitting? I think it's easy to sort of throw that out in every meeting, like, oh, is there anything else we should be doing?
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that's different than like setting aside a block of time and just reflecting overall, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? What are we missing? And I just feel like Bad Camp could be an opportunity to do that. There might be enough. And I think we can do this somewhat on phone calls, but it's easier. To me, sometimes that strategic planning stuff is better done face-to-face if you have the opportunity. And Bad Camp might be an opportunity where there's a handful of people together and we could sit back and do that. So I'm just throwing that out as an idea, something I'd be interested in. And we still got 6 weeks or 7 weeks to talk about this, so we don't have to make decisions today. But if we were going to do it at camp, it would be nice, to plan for it, to come into it with maybe an agenda. And I don't think if it's not appropriate for the summit, maybe it's just a BOF. We schedule an hour during camp sometime, and anybody who's interested could get together and dig in on that issue. So.
Mm-hmm. Do you, just fishing for ideas here, do you have anything in mind that you that you think that we could pursue that we're not doing right now?
So part of it for me, I think it's probably less about, like, it's easy, let's say the videos, right? It's great. We should do videos. Every week we talk about what, does anybody want to do a video? But maybe it would be helpful to think about, like, how do we get people to, how do we incentivize or encourage people to do that effectively, to talk a little bit more about that, or even blog posts. It's like, is there something we could be, sure, every month you say, or every meeting, is anybody writing a blog post, but like, what might we do to make that more? I'm thinking in terms, I guess what I'm thinking about, one of the great, and you've heard me, I'm sure, on Twitter and other places say this, or Gitter. One of the great things about Drupal is that it's been around long enough that if you Google any little problem or question about it, you just find all these information and resources. I think that's a great marketing and outreach tool. I'm finding that for Backdrop, right, that just isn't true right now, right? You try to Google a problem about Backdrop and it isn't out there. And I think sort of talking systematically about, is that because, is there anything we're doing wrong in terms of, or like, in terms of getting Google cred, or is it just, there's just not enough of that out there? Do we need to work harder? I saw a guy, I don't know if you noticed this yet, but a guy was asking a question about Twitter or about Backdrop on Twitter today. And I sent him a link to the forum and I said, please go ask your question there because that's a better place, you know, for us to, he was asking a super vague and unclear question. And it's like, in the context of the forum, we can actually go back and forth. Plus it's then recorded for posterity. And the more we build that up, I think the forum has the potential to be a real outreach tool.
And it's much better for Google ability too. Like things on Twitter just basically don't exist as far as Google is concerned.
Sure. Kind of the same thing for Gitter. I've been, every once in a while I'm tempted to ask a question in Gitter. And as you've heard, I try to make a real effort to put it in the forum. And then go ahead and like in Gitter and point people, hey, I just asked this question. Can somebody ask it? But I think there are little things like that that we could do that might build up that repository of information in the forum, which then makes that a much more valuable tool. And I think it could be a really valuable outreach tool. Well, maybe it's less about outreach because it isn't going to get somebody that's absolutely new, but it's going to get the person who's curious, right? And Google's it and not just, if they start Googling Backdrop and find all of these resources, that's a good thing. I don't know. Those are just some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, I'd like, well, the two things that, so one thing is promoting the forum as much as possible because it generates kind of a long tail of content like that will be accessible long-term, and redirecting people when they have questions to the forum as much as possible will help generate kind of organic content. That's one idea, right?
Yes. I suppose another thing that I keep thinking about is, at what point is there sort of a larger, more structured Backdrop gathering, right? I think we're not at Backdrop Con yet, or maybe camp. Maybe we are getting close to doing a Backdrop camp, but in a strategic planning session, face-to-face would be a great time to hash out, are we there? Should we start thinking about that? Should we just think more strategically about using BadCamp next year? Maybe next year we try to do something bigger there and more structured, and something that requires a little planning, though, that we're not going to come up with in 6 weeks at the next September, but that we could start thinking about now.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are the kinds of things.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pivot, I think, to Luke's topic, which is related to holding more in-person events. Yeah. Luke, I think you were mentioning that you were thinking about resurrecting a local user group and considering having that be Backdrop focused. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to. As you know, I ran a Drupal users group in Oakland called the East Bay Drupal Users Group for a few years, and that went on hiatus about 3 years ago at this point. But I've been gearing up to bring it back. I'll leave the backstory to that out of commission here. But all along, I had from the moment the Backdrop project started, as you know, I wanted to be inclusive with that. So my plan has been informally, and it's getting more formal, is to resurrect it as the East Bay Backdrop and Drupal users group. And I was actually looking at the calendar. I've been looking at different possibilities, but just now the calendar guides me by having limited numbers of choices of ideal times, enough that I can actually say some dates and places. So, we'll have an announcement here on the Backdrop outreach call. One of those exciting things that talk show hosts dream about. and that is the first motion is going to be October 4th at Sideshow, to coincide with the Backdrop outreach meeting, since it seems to kind of naturally flow from that whole idea. A very informal, beer gathering of whoever happens to be able to make it there to plan for the actual launch of it, which will be October 18th. If as of October 4th, that makes sense. So in the planning meeting on October 4th, we'll actually pick the more or less permanent location. There's a couple of fine candidates. Such that, like, if there's only one of them, that would be it, because they're all fine. But since there's more than one choices, we'll sift through there and by acclamation at the time, sort of figure out what the plan is for that first meeting. So I'm ready to announce that October 4th at Sideshow. I'll put it up in the thread on forums.backdropcms.org, and I have a few weeks to make it happen.
Awesome.
How's that sound?
It sounds great. So also Sideshow, their website is sideshowkitchen.com for information about where that venue is. If we've got any other locals that are interested in participating in that, geographically very close to our residence.
Imagine that.
Probably part of the reason for the planning there. But awesome, that sounds great. I like, this sounds fun and exciting. We'll see how that turns out and how frequently we end up holding. I say we. How frequently you end up holding the meetup and how many people end up attending on a regular basis should be kind of interesting. I know. Also local in the area, Mike McCaffrey's expressed an interest in doing more local collections, and Jack Bonte is also in the area, would be also another valuable resource. And Jack runs a business in which there are a half dozen people that are interacting with Backdrop on a daily basis. And so, there's also a fair number of Civi people in the area. So right. Yeah, we definitely have some opportunities here for a local user base that we could collect and get together on a fairly regular basis. And I think the fact that there is a kind of a limited number of people actually could increase the the recurring frequency of people showing up, because it's kind of like in the old days of Drupal users groups, that the attendance to them was very consistently, formed by a core of people, and then the people that filtered in and out on a regular basis, right? And potentially that the community is small and passionate enough about Backdrop that local meetups have a stronger chance of succeeding with a regular attendance, where the enthusiasm about Drupal is dwindled over time.
Right.
But potentially it's also just, the Drupal community also aged a lot and got older. So that also could be a factor. We won't know how it would be any different until we try. So awesome. That sounds really fantastic.
I think your point, though, Nate, is very good. That I think a lot of the enthusiastic meetup kind of organizers are losing a little bit of their enthusiasm about Drupal for lots of reasons, and some of them are moving and exploring Backdrop, and there's an opportunity there. So,
yeah. Okay.
I don't want to stick my nose into your area business, but last year, by chance, I stumbled across that San Francisco user group the night before Bad Camp, which you guys were on the agenda. That was do you remember that? The Drupal 8 versus Backdrop discussion.
Oh yeah, yeah. One of the last meetups at Chapter 3 before right. they shut down and moved over to Pantheon.
Yes. So that I don't know if anything like that is happening again this year, but I think I wasn't the only one that was there from out of town. That just happened to be in town and came to that meetup, and so I don't know if it's a good thing or not to schedule something, to think about Bad Camp and that, like co-program with Badcamp, or if it's better to counter-program it, away from it. But that was go ahead.
Oh, that's a great idea. I see what you're getting at there. Is that if we have an opportunity to do a pre-Badcamp thing, then we might do that. Although already with 2 full days and the presentations, we might be a little bit already stacked for participation. But I think that is a great idea. If there's an opportunity there, that there will be a collective of people, then it would be a good opportunity for us to get together.
You're not going to get a lot of people to come for that, but you might get a few, and it's just, you have to decide whether or not it makes sense. So, excuse me. Yeah. I'd like, on the local meetup stuff, I've been trying to think of what we might do locally, and we don't have a user base enough to do any kind of event. For personal reasons, I'm not so well. The existing meetup is backdrop friendly, but for other reasons, I'm not interested in trying to latch onto that. So I've been trying to think of other ways of doing it. And one of my thoughts right now, I talked to Jeffrey about doing maybe a backdrop for good event, a one-time thing where I use it both as an introduction to backdrop, but also like, here, let's work on a project and introduce it to some folks. So I think I know a few people in the area who've been wanting to try backdrop, and this would be a chance to like contribute towards a project and give them a chance to dip their fingers in it. And so it would be a promotional, it would be an outreach thing, but also supporting Jeffrey, the backdrop for good project. So I'm looking to just put a date on the calendar, maybe a Saturday, and advertise that. So, and one of my questions had been like, is it okay to call it backdrop for good? And I sort of chatted with Jeffrey about that at Drupal GovCon. So,
excellent. Oh, I didn't realize that you were at GovCon, Tim. Did you meet up with any other backdrop folks while you were there?
Jeffrey and we actually threw a backdrop BOF on the BOF board, but nobody came. But I took advantage of it to ask Jeffrey all kinds of questions. So he and I had a BOF, and and just talked a bunch about what's going on with backdrop and stuff. I certainly had a number of conversations with people, one-on-one. Met a number of people who were like, I would mention backdrop, and they're like, I haven't heard of that. What's that? And I gave them the spiel. So, I mean, that's one thing, is just to keep that kind of thing, that kind of thing going. So, do you know of anybody else that's going to DrupalCorn besides? I'm going to be at DrupalCorn. In fact, Jen, I think I assume it was Jen, said, hey, learn about backdrop at DrupalCorn. And DrupalCorn said, why? Who's going to be there? And she said, well, Tim, I think, is going to be there. So, so I guess I'm the back. So I said, I'll for sure do like a BOF. I'll schedule a BOF at DrupalCorn, and I bet at least 1 or 2 people show up. So.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I know Lullabot founder Matt Westgate is going to be there because he's keynoting. And Matt is actually a large proponent of backdrop as well.
Good.
So he probably at the very least would be interested, and also is a great person to solicit, collecting other people as well. Because if Matt's there, other people may want to tag along.
I could maybe before I pick a time slot, I'll connect with him and see what's good for him.
Yeah, that would be advisable. Okay. Let's see. I lost my agenda tab. But I think that kind of wraps it up for topics today. Do you guys have anything else that you guys would like to talk about? Okay.
That's good.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys both for joining. Really appreciate the discussion and everything. We have some great ideas here, and that's exciting to hear about the resurrection of East Bay users group. Now, eBug.
I actually have a URL. I have ebdug.org that's hosted on Acquia Cloud. So,
are there any other Drupal user groups that have actually added backdrop to the name like that? Do you know? I feel like I've heard some people talk about the idea. I don't know if anybody's done it.
I don't know. I think I might have heard of one on the East Coast, but I can't recall.
Okay.
how that has gone. So
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't have any other.
Someday we can go global and make it everybody's backdrop and Drupal users group.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. We've got another meeting coming up in 30 minutes where we talk about dev tasks. So it's an exciting time because we're post code freeze and pre backdrop 112. So thank you guys for joining. Thanks everybody out there for watching, and we'll check in again here in half an hour. So thanks all.
Thanks.
Hey.
Bye, folks.